Welcome to Intro Psychology Unit 2. We're now going to be talking about the research methods of psychology. And it's important to note that psychology is considered a social science or a science, and we do follow the scientific method. And so you may have learned about the scientific method in other courses and other disciplines, but we're going to focus on it tailored towards working with people and working with psychological phenomena. We will be talking a little bit about animal research as well. So before we get started in terms of research methods, it's important to understand that all research in psychology must be done with an ethical lens. And so by ethics, we're really talking about research ethics. Every psychological study, no matter how simple or how complex, offers a variety of benefits and a variety of costs. Costs could include actual monetary costs, like the cost of paying a research team, the cost of paying participants, the cost of research materials, but it could also be the cost of time. Benefits could, of course, include the knowledge that society will gain, the safety that we may gain from doing the study, preventative care that may come from the study. And it's important to understand that all psychological studies, the benefits must outweigh the costs. And so when we think about some of the costs and benefits, it's important to understand that we also must pay attention to any risk of harm. If the costs include a risk of harm, that must be thoroughly assessed. And harm can include things like physical harm, receiving an electric shock, being set in an uncomfortable place, putting on a EEG helmet, which includes lots of sticky goo. It could also be things like emotional harm. If someone's filling out a survey about their mental health, it may cause some of their symptoms to become exacerbated. Some of the costs may also include something about financial costs, taking time off work to participate in the study, driving and parking for the cost, for example. So we want to make sure, absolutely from as many perspectives as we can, that participant safety is well regarded and well understood, and that we've done everything we can to minimize any risks to participants. Another thing we also consider is how will the world benefit from the research? Will this improve safety overall if we continue with this research? Will it improve medicine? Will it improve our knowledge of something really important to learn about? And so when we think about this, we reflect on the goals of science. And some of the textbooks write this in slightly different format. The way I like to present it is the goal of science is always to describe a phenomena. If it's something new that nobody has described yet, you want to describe the phenomena. Then you want to learn how to predict the thing that you just described. And then we want to learn how to control it. And always trying to control for society's benefit, never for society's detriment, and never for personal gain. So to give you two examples, let's say we're interested in first describing how automobile accidents tend to occur. So if you think about it, automobiles have not been around more than 200 years. And so when the automobiles first became popular in North America, first types of research looking at automobile safety was merely descriptive, describing the types of collisions that occurred in vehicles, and trying to identify when they happen. Do they happen at sunrise and sunset? Do they happen more in the night? And once you learn to describe sort of how these vehicles happen, we can start to try and predict them. We can start to say, okay, will vehicles happen more often when we're going at certain speeds? And then you might find, yes, anything beyond a certain speed limit on a certain type of roadway tends to be more predictive of an automobile collision. And then after you predict it, we can try to control it. We can try to control it with speed limits or traffic lights. We can try to control it by implementing automobile passenger laws, like wearing a seatbelt. Another example could be something where you may be describing someone who is aggressive. You might be describing prevalences of aggression in society. How many people have encountered a physical altercation with another human? Once you describe that phenomena, then we can start to look at the predictions. If somebody is involved in a physical hands-on altercation, what were some of the attributes that led up to that? Perhaps they didn't get enough sleep and they were very cranky and tired. Perhaps they have a hard time regulating their emotions. Maybe people who were tired or more angry are more likely to get into physical altercations. And then we can move into the control stage where we attempt to implement interventions through meditation or mindfulness or therapy to those who get more run down or have trouble dealing with their emotions in the attempt to reduce physical altercations with other people. So this is how we go through the describe, the predict, and the control stages to try and use science to benefit society. And it's not so much for individual researchers to benefit. It's thinking about everyone altogether. And so one of the things we have to think about with research ethics is informed consent. Informed consent is what we refer to explain that our research participants are willingly to participate and they understand all the risks and benefits. In psychology, we do not recruit people who are blinded to what's going to happen to them in the study. There are some cases of deception where there may be something minimal and surprising, or we may use the study data in a way that we don't tell participants. And if you are using deception, that has to be carefully documented and definitely written about in your ethics application. In most cases, however, even if the participants don't know how you're using or exactly what you're measuring or your exact intentions, we do tell them fully what they will experience. So even if they don't know why they're experiencing it, we have to let them know exactly what they're going to experience. Will they come to a lab and fill out a pen and paper survey? Will they do a survey online? Will they watch a series of videos? Will they have to discuss with other humans about topics such as things that could be emotionally heavy for them? We have to tell them what they're going to do. And so informed consent is a full explanation of what they will be doing in the study. We explain the costs and benefits, and we explain a broad purpose of it, and we ask the participants to consent and to sign the form. Of course, if they're not able to sign, we usually ask for a parent, a guardian, or some sort of legal sponsor to sign the form if we're working with vulnerable populations such as children or elders or individuals who are not able to give formal consent. And so consent also needs to include the right to withdraw from the study. If participants become uncomfortable, if once they enter the study they realize they didn't understand consent and now that they understand it they're not comfortable, we have to make sure participants have the right to leave the study at any time, whether immediately after signing consent or at the very end of the study or anywhere in between. A good example would be if someone signed up to do a physiological test and then realized that the EEG cap required putting gel in your hair and it would take you a long time after the study is complete to wash the gel out. Some people with long hair may say, oh, I didn't realize this when I signed up for the study. I actually have to go do something else right after the study. I don't have time to wash the gel from my hair. I'm going to withdraw my consent. That is fully acceptable and fully legitimate. There's also the right to refuse. So if a participant is doing a series of questions or a series of survey answers and they come to a question that is particularly loaded for them or it's kind of awkward for them and they don't want to answer it, they don't have to give a reason for why they don't want to answer it. They can just choose to skip that question at any point in time. If you're going to make mandatory questions that they cannot skip, that should be listed at the outset of the study. So you're doing an online survey that won't let them go past a page without answering something, you should mention that at the outset. And most surveys are designed so they can skip an answer if they choose. And finally, it's always important to include the contact information for the lead researcher involved in the study, as well as for the ethics board that gave the study clearance. So it's important that people always feel comfortable in the study. We never want to coerce or force a person to participate in our study. And please note, we tend to call humans who participate in our study participants and not subjects. It represents how they are actively choosing to participate and they're not being subjected to our research methods. Now, another part of ethics is that these participants must receive fair compensation. So this is an incentive or a benefit for them, but this cannot be a coercive benefit. And so what we mean is it has to be fair. It has to be the right size for this study. If a person is going through a lot of work to complete a study, let's say they're filling out questionnaires multiple times a month, it's important to keep them feeling positive about the study, make them feel comfortable participating in the study, and give them frequent rewards. Some typical types of incentives we tend to see are things like gift cards, small monetary gifts, $5, $25. For children who participate in research, they might get a small toy that's not worth a lot, but something they'll be interested in, or even a gold sticker. If we're doing work in school, we may give stationery or pencils. If we're doing work with animals, we may supply them with food. And we may also supply participants with a lunch voucher or a free lunch after a focus group or something of that nature. Sometimes there is no set incentive at the end, but rather participants enter a raffle. Sometimes we have a larger giveaway product like a nice electronic product, perhaps some high-end headphones, if you will, or earbuds, and not every participant receives those, but if they participate, their entry goes into the raffle, and so many chances will win the earbuds. Most ethics committees require you to put the odds ratios, so if there's 100 participants, how many earbud sets will be given away? Is it just 1 out of 100, 2 out of 100, 4 out of 100, or what have you? Now, sometimes these gifts can be too big. For instance, if you give away a car or a house for participating in your research, that's considered coercive. And so coercive is the idea that now you're overpaying participants and people may start to participate in the research even if it makes them uncomfortable. And it may also de-escalate and be at the detriment of the quality of your research data. That is, if somebody's just doing it for the incentive because it's getting paid, they may not actually fill out the questionnaire properly. They may not actually try to answer the cognitive questions. They may not fully participate with their full motivation. So for example, if you are giving away course credit and students are not that motivated to participate, but they want the course credit, they may just force their way through. And so that's a problem. You want to make sure it's something interesting enough that you can rely on the validity of your data. More often, even if it doesn't seem like you're giving away a car or a house, sometimes a moderately sized incentive can be coercive to vulnerable populations. Let's say you want to do a study in the community looking at-risk individuals, perhaps homeless individuals or low-income individuals, and you're paying them something like $30 to participate. That $30 may be very significant to that individual, and they may do something in the study that makes them uncomfortable because they are such in need of that incentive. So you have to make sure there is a balance there and that you're not over or underpaying and you're using what's considered fair compensation. Now, aside from participant safety in the immediate form, we want to think about participant safety in the long term, and that includes data security. You want to make sure at the outset that you have an idea if your study is going to be confidential or if it's going to be anonymous. These are different words. So confidentiality means that you know who your participants are and the data set can link to their identities, but that you're not going to let the public or anybody see that. You're going to hold the participants' identities as confidential, and only the research team knows who your participants are. That's very different from anonymous, where even the researchers don't know who the participants are. Sometimes you can't have anonymous data, and so therefore you have to have confidential. Anonymous can be done if you're doing an online survey and you're not tracking people's IP addresses. Confidential would have to be necessary if anybody's coming into the lab and you're seeing them face to face. Obviously that's confidential, no longer anonymous. It would also be confidential and not anonymous if you're tracking people's social insurance numbers or student ID numbers or date of birth or something that could potentially identify them. Regardless if the data is confidential or anonymous, you want to make sure that the access to your data set is very secure. Even if it's anonymized data, you want to make sure that the storage of your data is safe, that you're keeping it on an encrypted USB drive or an encrypted external drive or an encrypted hard drive, and that the people who have access to that are just on the research team. It's very common to see that you'll keep things locked twice over, so locked in a cabinet, locked in a room. That's pretty common data storage policy. In addition, you want to make sure you've protected everything against data access. Especially if you're collecting things online, you want to make sure you're aware of which servers the data is transferring over. Especially if you're using any online platforms using countries outside of your current country, the online and data security laws may vary. So if you can, always use data servers within your own country.